In this edition of Assignment Asia.
So we are on our way up to the site where they're going to catch insect bats.
Bats have been identified as the most likely source of SARS COV2, the virus that's changed our world.
We're trying to compare all the coronaviruses that we will recover from bats and trying to compare that with known human coronaviruses.
We have a big plan for predicting the next possible pandemic.
We meet with those studying bats and those eating bats.
Kasi may mga virus daw.
Wala naman sir, na-virus na sana kami lahat dito. Plato namin
To find out what it takes to prevent the next big pandemic.
Ito, masarap. Huli. Ayun, huli. Sarap nyo.
The COVID-19 pandemic. Almost 2 years and counting. With no end in sight.
We reached all-time numbers. We're 100% occupied. Our ICUs were full always, and our emergency rooms were overwhelming with COVID patients.
It's a global health crisis with one solution.
Science basically is the main driver of how we can fix this.
While some scientists are dealing with the current outbreak, some are trying to prevent the next. Given that coronaviruses caused 3 major outbreaks in the past 20 years, many researchers believe it's the virus to investigate. To do that, they have to study bats, a well-known host of coronaviruses. This makes the Philippines home to almost 80 species of bats, an important research ground.
We did a study on bat coronavirus back in 2012. We caught a total of 207 bat individuals representing several species, and using genetic sequences, we found out that 33%, or 1 out of 3 bat, has a coronavirus.
They don't die from that?
They don't die. That's the beauty of it. I mean, with these bats, even though they have so many viruses that are found in them. So these specimens, these are called rhinolophus, or your horseshoe bats. The genus is similar to the ones that was caught in southern China, where the bat coronavirus there is 96.2, similar to the SARS COV2.
The closeness between that coronavirus found in bats in China and SARS COV2, the coronavirus that's been ravaging the world since 2020, has convinced many scientists that COVID-19 may have originated from bats. Philip Alviola, a Filipino zoologist who specializes in bat ecology, is one.
Although we don't yet have a smoking gun evidence of finding the SARS COV2 genome in any animals, as a source. But with that, the fact that it's very near or very close, that would really point strongly to that animal origin. It's probably not from bats to animals, direct transmission, but there's an in-between animal that occurred between them.
By eating? What? Eating the meat?
Probably by eating the meat, handling the meat.
There is precedent as well that makes this theory credible. The MERS-CoV outbreak in 2012 and the SARS epidemic in the early 2000s.
It could have started from bats, transferred to the civet. For example, the MERS, they originated from animals in the Middle East, from camels.
How the two viruses jumped from animals to humans remains a question. But Dr. Joseph Masangkay, an animal pathologist at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, is convinced studying bat viruses is key to understanding why coronaviruses are particularly virulent.
Because bats are really unique animals. They are the only true flying mammals. And so, because of the mobility of these animals, they can easily transfer from one place to another. And if they carry diseases, then they can transmit it to that one. If it is confined to them, no problem. But if it would jump to species, then that becomes a problem.
And so for a decade and a half, Dr. Masangkay, Philip, and other local scientists have been studying bats. They've been all over the Philippines, using funding from Japanese universities. Pandemic restrictions, however, now have them confined to nearby sites. Today, we are hiking up the forests of Mount Makiling, an ASEAN heritage park, and for Filipinos, a mythical place.
So we are on our way up to the site where they're going to catch insect bats.
The destination is up the mountain outside the bat cave. Even though they've been portrayed by humans as vicious, bats actually play crucial roles in nature, helping in the pollination and regeneration of forests, for instance.
We have here the 6-meter net. So we set it across this ledge over here. And then we put in some foliage, just to block the entry of some of the bats that might evade the net.
The bats don't come out to hunt for food until around sunset though. So we wait.
Alright, so the bats are about to come out. It's around 5:30 in the afternoon. Now, of course, because we are in the middle of a pandemic, they all have to wear full PPEs, and I have to do that too. And from now on, you need to be extremely quiet.
We've been doing this for more than 20 years. We didn't have any gloves, we didn't have protective clothing back then, and we got bitten. I mean, I've been bitten countless times. I can't recall how many times I've been bitten. And well, with the onset of the pandemic, I mean, when I started working with bat virologists, so that's where the scare came in.
Not before long, bats started flying out of the cave. One caught the net, then a second one. Before we knew it, we'd lost count. Philip says we came at the right time and the right spot.
Normally when you reach the months of June, July, August, so the numbers shoot up because all of the females go to this cave during the breeding season. So that maternity rooster you're gonna expect before we counted around 5,000 bats. Some of these sites, caves, can be really inaccessible or sometimes very, very hard to reach. But you have to endure that. You have to go there, in order to be sure that you can capture these very enigmatic bats.
And while they do catch the bats, they try their best to keep them alive. They untangle them carefully from the traps and place them individually in bags. The work then continues after hiking down on the ground.
And we sometimes do see like very extreme differences in the measurements. And sometimes we also get tissue samples for molecular sequencing to determine if there are different species or not.
The most crucial part of their work, however, particularly now that we are in the middle of a viral outbreak, is swabbing for viruses. And while they haven't caught any bats with COVID-19, they say their main aim is to identify other viruses that could be deadly to humans.
Coronavirus occurs naturally in bat population. That's what we found out. What we're doing right now is taking that results even further and looking into other coronaviruses that could be pathogenic to humans. So we're trying to compare all the coronaviruses that we will recover from bats and trying to compare that with known human coronaviruses and try to gauge their potential pathogenicity.
If they accidentally kill bats, they keep them for further examination. Otherwise, they release them back into the wild. Bat hunting, in fact, is a restricted activity in the Philippines. But for generations, pockets of Filipino communities have been hunting, eating, and at times selling bats. We met a group of men in the northern province of Isabela who show us this tradition.
All right, so we're here and, well, it's just someone's backyard. So, Kuya Jimar,
Yes, sir.
kala ko kung saan tayo pupunta eh. Sa kapitbahay lang pala.
Kapit baryo.
Tapos paano ito? Kasi may may-ari nito eh.
O sir, kausapin namin yung may bahay,
Oo.
yung may-ari kung gusto.
Oo.
Pagpaalam muna namin.
The owner of the property eventually gave his go signal. Jimar Domingo and his friends had already spotted the colony of bats.
Ano bang klaseng mga paniki yan? Diyan, sa taas?
Yan sir, o yan. Mga maliliit lang yan sir.
Fruit bat ba yan? Fruit bat.
Parang hindi sir kasi ang kinakain yata yan ay mga insekto.
Bata pa kayo, madami ng mga paniki dito.
Marami na sir. Marami na.
So matagal na kayo naghuhuli?
Oo sir
Gaano katagal na?
may 20 years na siguro sir.
All those years of hunting bats showed in how quick they squeezed the bats to death. It was brutal.
Napatayin na, didin lang yung ulo.
But Jimar and his fellow bat hunters never hesitated. While at another location to catch more bats, Jimar even wanted to show our cameras what a live bat looks like.
Ngayon, nangangagat rin yan.
As soon as he said it, Jimar got bitten.
Okay lang kayo?
Okay lang sir.
Ha?
Okay.
Saan? Patingin? Nakagat eh, oh. Ay! Hindi, wala bang rabies yan? Wala bang...
Wala.
Ha? Wala?
Wala yan.
Walang rabies. Hindi nga.
Wala.
Nakagat na kayo dati?
Dati. Ilang beses na?
Ilang beses na kayo nakagat?
wala
Walang nangyari
naman.
sa inyo?
Wala.
Sigurado kayo?
Oo sir, gin lang yan, tsaka pulutan mamaya.
Hindi tayo pupunta sa ospital?
Hindi sir.
I tried to convince him to go to the hospital, but he insisted on going straight back home instead. They were going to have bat meat for lunch. I watched them debone the bats with ease, then prepare other ingredients, just like they'd cook pork stew.
Yan na.
Oh, ito na. Ito na. Oh.
Ayun na siya. Parang
Balon-balonan tsaka
balon-balonan,
atay.
atay, no?
Oo, sir. Mamaya pag matikman mo yan, ay parang atay.
Sabi ng asawa ko, huwag daw kakain.
Pwede, sir. Try nyo lang.
Kasi
Tatlo.
may mga virus daw. Ano? Meron?
Wala naman, sir. Na-virus na sana kami lahat dito. Noon pa. Ang tagal na namin nag-uulam ng ganito, kumakain ng ganito.
Oo nga. Pero ibig sabihin, noon hindi nyo alam yung tungkol sa COVID. Ngayon, alam nyo yung tungkol sa COVID, hindi kayo natatakot kumain yan.
Sa awa ng Diyos, sir, hanggang ngayon wala pa namang kwan. Wala namang epekto, wala namang COVID. Bango na. Bango na.
They actually believe quite the opposite.
Kasi ito daw may benefits na nabibigay din kung baga bababa yung ano ba yun, dugo. Pag anemic ka, mag-ulam ka lang daw ng ganito, nakakadagdag na ng kwan.
Ah, ganun.
Oo,
Sabi?
sabi nila.
Sila? Doktor?
Hindi.
Hindi.
Kwan lang. Makasama, gano'n.
Okay. So yun ang paniniwala ninyo? Oo. Yeah. So may benefit sa katawan?
Oo, sir. Pag anemic daw, yun ang kwan.
As to why these men have not gotten sick from eating bats, scientists at the University of the Philippines in Los Baños say that cooking in high temperature could theoretically kill viruses, but they still would not advise eating bat meat.
There is a risk. We don't know if it's a very high risk or it's a very negligible risk, but there's still risk all the same.
Riskier or less risky than if the virus had already gone into another host?
Right. Because sometimes, in virology, when it enters another host, sometimes there's amplification of the virus. The magnitude of it amplifies. Or sometimes there's mutation that happens. Sometimes there's recombination of two different viruses. So it appears that it's really probably much riskier with evolves an intermediate host rather than eating the bats themselves. But of course, the risk is still there. Definitely, the risk is still there if you consume the bats.
And even if you don't eat bats, you could still be exposed to their viruses in other ways.
I mean, we can be in contact not only with the bites, but with the urine, the oils, or the feces, coming into contact with our hands. And then when we, have dinner or lunch or something.
All these risk factors, Filipino bat virus researchers say, are essentially man-made. There is no need to fear bats if humans leave them alone. Humans have not.
In Malaysia and Indonesia, when they burned the forest, the fruit bats went to the farmers' houses, roosted there because there is fire there. And then they poop down, there is pig under, and even fruit trees, they ate the fruit drop, and the pigs and the horses ate. See, they got disease because you disturb the forest. And a corollary study that we had proved that these fruit bats can fly very long distance, from Batanes to Taiwan, and from Thailand to Burma. So if they carry diseases, they don't have to have the passport or the visa to enter. And they carry, it's called transboundary animal diseases.
And that is why they believe the next big viral outbreak could come from bats yet again.
We're trying to develop a model, a simulation, of when or where the next bat derived coronavirus infection in humans will occur. So the end product would be having this hazard map, color-coded if you want to. So let's say red would be high probability of getting an infection from bats, and then something like that.
Philip and his team are looking at completing this model in 3 years, though the pandemic could delay this timeline.
The landscape information will be helpful as well if they're living in forest or if they're living in caves, or what's their behavior. Do they congregate a lot, or do they form large roosts, or are they disturbed a lot? So we try to synthesize all this data and try to figure out what are the risk factors, what are the drivers of virus presence in bats.
In other words, if they know where the bat viruses that are deadly to humans are, they can issue necessary warnings to nearby populations and urge the government to establish protected habitats for bats. Measures that may be able to stop the next pandemic. But Dr. Masangkay says it's a race.
It's very difficult to say. Yes, because diseases, they are always one step ahead. Yeah. It is only the time that you discover it when it erupts.
The virus is smarter than us.
Yes. Yes. The message of wildlife here is that we are here in the wild, we mind our own business, do not come to us.
So in other words, don't eat us.
Yes. Don't eat us, don't hunt us.
Turns out, the way to beat viruses is to restrain ourselves from disturbing nature. Something human history has shown is easier said than done. For Simon Asia, I'm Barnaby Lo. Share your thoughts and contribute story ideas to our show by contacting us on social media.